and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, can we have roll call?
Commissioner Robinson.
Here.
Commissioner Maldonado.
Here.
Vice Mayor Marriott.
Here.
And Mayor Petrilla.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to start by giving a warm welcome to our new Commissioner for District 4, Mr. Maldonado. Thank you so much for agreeing to join our motley crew up here. We all really appreciate it. So thank you so much for being here. Does anyone have any changes for the agenda?
I have a couple. I'd like to pull item C on consent to action.
Okay, so we'll move 4C to 5B.
Vice Mayor, just if I could remind you that we decided consent would be pulled at the time of consent and then just discussed
Okay.
after
Perfect.
the rest of the consent
Got it.
calendar is approved.
Okay,
And
perfect.
then we would talk about the item that's pulled.
Great.
And then I have an item to add for discussion, which is to discuss for clarification on ordinance 2024-19, which is a look back. There appears to be some items that need correction.
Okay. Anyone else have any changes to the agenda? Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
I make the motion.
I second.
Vice Mayor Marriott.
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson.
Yes.
Commissioner Maldonado.
Yes.
And Mayor Petrilla.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. And so first up, I think we have our hurricane recovery and preparedness presentation.
Good evening, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, Laura Canary, Community Development Director. So this evening, as we transition upon giving a hurricane recovery update and preparedness update, I'm going to be tag teaming it with Camden Mills as we talk about more of the preparedness side of things. So starting off, we're going to be looking at the permit processing, give a quick snapshot on that, then look at resources and communications, do a little bit of a deeper dive to look at the demolitions to date, and then we're going to talk about hurricane preparedness. We're going to go into talk about the training that we've been conducting, talk about the substantial damage administrative plan that's been drafted, and then transition into public services and what they're doing over there for hurricane preparedness. So looking at permit processing through June 22nd, we have 4,720 applications that have been submitted or that were submitted. On average, we're taking in 299 a day. We finally met that goal of issuing 60 in a day. Again, that was at one point that we pulled the data, but we are very pleased to say that we've met that goal. As far as inspection goes, we're averaging just over 100 a day. And again, those challenges continue to be the same challenges, just that documentation and needing additional documentation on certain things. The pie chart to the right breaks it down as far as what is in review. As far as received and not in review, we have 300 permit applications. We've issued 3,595. We currently have 142 in review, and we've closed out 445. As far as resources and communications, as one can imagine, I know even just since the time that I've been here, with you all pivoting and making changes, or whether it's an ordinance that's put in place or anything that we've had to do to kind of look at our policies and procedures and be able to better serve the community, there's been changes, and so communicating that is really important. And so we're in the process of working with the communications manager, Mark Portugal, on just really looking across the board. It's not a matter of just updating our FAQs and putting new information out there, because it's living in different places, and so we're really doing an overhaul right now. But in the meantime, if there's anything, just please continue. I really appreciate it. I know some have been sending in things, whether if it's something that's been brought to their attention or that they've caught themselves, please continue to do that, because we really are trying to, at a minimum, be able to at least get any information that's no longer, if it's outdated or irrelevant, get that removed, so just to avoid any confusion. But we're currently working on that. We're also looking at our labor rate sheets in particular. That was one of the things that was put out there in the beginning of the process to really serve as a guide to the community owner builders in particular, to be able to, as they're developing their scope of work and showing the cost associated with that scope of work, to be able to use the labor rate sheet as part of a guide. Part of the issue with that is the rates that are on that sheet are truly rates of what you would anticipate paying someone. So for example, the average rate of what an electrician would get paid. It's not capturing what an individual or a consumer would pay to receive those services. So there's some factoring in that you have to use as part of the evaluation when you're, coming up with that ultimate lump sum. And so we felt that after quite a few people had brought it to our attention that it was kind of misguiding them or misleading. We've taken that back and added a disclaimer to the sheet, kind of referencing that this is a guide and some of the other things to be looking at, and our intent is to put that back out there. But if there's any question as to why that was removed, that is the answer. It was simply because of the way that it was being factored and things were being calculated. It was starting to cause more confusion than help, we felt.
I have a question, because I just know that going through the FEMA SISD desk reference, it specifically says when it talks about the estimates of owner and volunteer labor, and I'm quoting from this, it says the applicant should provide an estimate of the value of owner or volunteer labor. The value placed on labor should be estimated based on applicable minimum hour wage scales for the skill and type of construction work that is done. So I'm just asking, how does that differ from a wage scale on a list? This is exactly what they're saying to do. And I don't want to misspeak, but my understanding, and to address your question, is more that it wouldn't be so much, even the range of what is on that sheet isn't so much the question, because if somebody wanted to use a number in that range to show what the cost of the labor was, I don't think that we would question that. It's the additional component of that as well. So whether it was the overhead or the overhead and profit only goes to contractors.
Well, what I'm saying is, as far as if to pay a so for example, if you were hiring a plumber and the plumber's rate says on the sheet, for example, I don't know what the range is, but let's just say that it's 25 to 45 an hour. You could potentially use that 25 for the cost of the plumber, for the labor itself, but beyond the labor, there's going to be additional costs that are included in that to arrive at that total amount.
Such a, what additional costs? Because if we're talking, I'm specifically talking owner-builder. And I'm not talking about contractor, I'm talking owner-builder. When this says the applicable minimum hour wage scale for the skill and type of construction work is done, that's pretty black and white to me. If you're talking about management of that, which I know that there is a portion in here that says about the management, it says construction management and supervision. Is that what you're referring to?
No, what I was more referring to is that there was, so for example, if someone submitted an application and showed that and used the rate on that sheet to show what the cost of their electrician was, and that was it, just using that rate amount. The question comes into play of we're knowing that that is the cost. Again, this is per the directive of us understanding that this is what a labor cost is, the hourly rate of what they're getting paid, and knowing that there's other costs associated, so the consumer is basically not paying that rate. They're going to be paying, there's going to be a surcharge on that if you're paying a contractor to do that work.
But there is, right, but we're talking owner-builder compared to contractor, because specifically it says that contractors have to put in their overhead and profit, and it does not say that to owner-builder.
But as far as their cost of materials?
And it says, I think there's, well, materials is a separate thing. We're not talking materials, because there was two columns in the packets. There's a column for materials and there's a column for labor, and we're talking about labor wages, not materials. So materials are material costs, they're not labor costs.
See, my understanding was more that the rates were causing more confusion because it wasn't directing people to also capture any other additional costs, that they were just looking at that and saying, here's the average of what an electrician is getting paid an hour. I assume that I'm factoring that it's going to take X amount of hours, and I'm multiplying that times what an electrician would get paid, and that's what I'm putting as my total scope of work cost.
Well, that's not how it outlined on the sheet. You actually had to break out your labor costs separately from your material costs.
Right, on the FEMA packet,
Right.
but on that labor sheet, we didn't have that part on it, and
Well, that was just the rates to use for the labor rate side of it.
that's what we
Right.
thought, but that we were only getting that piece. We were only getting the hourly rate associated with that labor sheet.
So we were accepting things with just the labor rate and not with the materials cost on it?
Well, we would accept the application, but then as it was reviewed, we were finding that, okay, this isn't capturing, we don't feel adequately the entire scope of work because it's just showing that it's calculating the cost of an electrician, of what an electrician would get paid for that hourly rate. And part of the problem is that there's not a, and I can defer to the attorney because FEMA doesn't have that, provide you that guide of exactly what to use. We've talked extensively with the city manager too about, can they even come up with a range that includes it all? Like maybe it's a broad range, but it's the average cost of, say, drywall per square foot, and then at least allow that to be used as a guide to an owner builder. But my understanding, and I'll get back to you if I misunderstood, but my understanding was more that when some individuals were using the sheet, they were just looking at that rate and, okay, electricity, so I'm going to use that rate, or plumbing, and I'm going to use that, and then just factoring it times the hour and then putting that in. And so it didn't include whether if there was demo work before that, or if there was, it didn't.
Right, well, but again, it was line item out on the actual packet itself. Demo was item out on the packet as separately. So that would have fallen under a different minimum hourly wage scale for the skill and type of construction work that is done, that being demo, would have been probably on a low end of a scale. It's not going to fall under carpentry or electric, so.
So our plan is to go ahead and put that sheet back out with the disclaimer of, again, this is intended to be captured as the labor part of the project, and then, any addition. The other thing is that it's not even necessarily perfectly accurate, because you may be able to get a quote from a contractor that looks different than that, and that would suffice as well. So that's where it was kind of getting tricky, because again, it's one piece of information that you can use as a guide, but as it seemed to be starting to cause a little bit more confusion, that was hence why, okay, we need to do something. But if by all means, if there's better direction, like that there are suggestions, we just didn't want to just take it away and not put it back out there without at least explaining this is why we felt it was causing some confusion, and where if you're looking at this is again just exclusively for the labor portion of it, not total scope.
Yeah, I think that there is also the metro area of our area, which is Clearwater, Tampa, St. Pete. There's metro rates as early as or as late as March of 24. Instead of, I think we're using stuff from 23 before. So there's newer rates on there. I just wanted to make that clear because I know that there's been some confusion on that, and just wanted to make sure that we're putting that out there correctly for folks, especially in light of another storm season, and we'll have one every year after that, another storm season. So I just want to make sure we get it right going forward.
And we've even talked about being able to, again, hopefully we don't have to use these lessons learned necessarily exactly the same, but all of this data that we have now, it's going to be very, I shouldn't say easy, but now that we have it in one platform, we'll be able to segment that and be able to look at what is the average cost. And so if we were wanting to in the future be able to try and simplify things, or at least provide, even if, again, if it's a broader range, but if it's, again, being more directly associated with the overall scope of work and can be used as a tool, we think it'd be extremely helpful, because it absolutely has been one of the hiccups.
Well, I know you can get online and look what it costs to install one sheet of drywall, and it ranges from $40 to $70. So, it ranges that way. And the question is, what is acceptable for this city? Are you going to do the middle of the road, or what? Or what kind of guidelines? I think what we need to do is more of a rule of thumb in that, so that we can at least guide people to the right direction and know what's going to be acceptable.
Okay. We're also developing a list of typical inspections. This was something that came up along the way that actually one of our inspectors had suggested that, again, it's going to be kind of it's not a one-size-fits-all, but just what you can expect, especially as an owner builder, because there has been some inspections that come up along the way that people just maybe didn't anticipate or didn't see coming. So we're developing that, as well as we're compiling. A lot of this information is already out there, but it's in different places. We're providing 2 documents that are going to be basically one-stop packets for demolitions and for elevating your home. So it'll include all of the documentation needed, and then again, you may not need to complete all of it depending on what your project is, but kind of, so there might be more than you might have more than you need, but we'll have it all in one place just to again help. And a lot of this is not only based on our team's internal feedback that we've received, but also from the volunteers, and then of course the community members and you all, of what we've been hearing along the way. And then we are continuing to work with the new business analyst who's been extremely helpful, and they've been coming into our department and looking at our processes, internal processes, anything from the intake of permits and how they're received and then how they're divided up, or if you will, how the permit techs get assigned to those cases. And so we're looking at how we can really improve and become more efficient. And so we're very grateful to have that help and from a technology standpoint to really be able to utilize the tools that we have, as well as the new tools such as Forerunner to be able to improve our processes. So when we look at demolitions through 6/22, there's been 121 demolition permit applications, 63 issued, and 12 closed, which means that 12 of those buildings have actually came down. And the average amount of time that it's taking when you take out a few of the outliers, because there are a couple outliers in there, it's averaging 38 days. I do want to call attention to the fact that we normally can and will be, and we adhere to the less than 30 days. One of the things with the demolitions in particular, and talking with the team, is it's one of the few. There's a few instances that actually require a pre-inspection, demolitions being one of them. So that again can take a little bit more time. It's the other 2, of course, are turbidity screenings, and then also when they need to come out and look at it when a pool is going in, when they need to do a pre-inspection of the site to make sure that the silt fencing is up. So with regard to a demo permit in particular, and using that as an example and why you would maybe see a little bit more time, I want to just call attention to a couple things, because when you pull a report in iWork, it just looks at that time, and it's like on that given day. But it's basically looking at true permit applications. And a lot of times what we'll get, especially given that in the beginning we were encouraging people to go ahead and apply for your permit, and then we can get the rest of the information, get it in. So that starts the ticker, if you will, the timing, but it's truly not a true permit application full being ready to be reviewed until we have that additional documentation. But iWork is counting that time, if that makes sense. So it gets tagged on, and so it counts that cumulative time, so it makes it look like it's taking a longer time frame on the review side, which it really isn't. And then in addition to that, again, is just the extra step. Again, it can take a couple days or take longer depending on the circumstances, but just the instance of a demo permit actually requiring a pre-site inspection prior to issuing that permit.
Got one question regarding the demolitions. Are we keeping tabs on those that are designated as historical structures?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Laura, I've got a quick question for you also. On the demolition permits, is the pre-site or the pre-demolition, the pre-permit inspection, are those scheduled and happening next day like other inspections are, or is that on a different schedule?
I can't confirm.
Not sure. Okay, yeah,
I can get back to you on that.
Okay, that's fine. And then is there internally, are you guys talking about any kind of like goals to get to where, maybe if, particularly once you have a list available for people where they know exactly what information they need to submit when they're submitting one of those, are there any kind of internal goals of like, we think we could get this down to 14 days or 20 days or? Honestly, right now, a lot of our focus is the time is of the essence for sure, but we also, we find that a lot of the
it seems like sometimes the frustration is that back and forth. So the timing is absolutely important in one part of it. But one of the things that we've discussed a lot internally, and especially recently, is if there's a way to more, like from start to finish, have it with one reviewer. Maybe there's a second one if possible, so that not only from a communication standpoint you have one point of contact to see that permit through, but again, just so it's easier back and forth, whether there's documentation needed. Now, we do know that that essentially could maybe, make the process take a little longer, but we really believe that in essence it'll actually create some efficiencies. So that's one of the things that we've been working with the business analyst on, and so that's one of our goals, is to try and kind of change the process to where we can have a little bit more ownership and accountability as well per each of those permits. And then I think too, the end goal is we're not going to stop just because we hit that 60 in a day, but I think that was one of the benchmarks that was created earlier on, and I think that the other thing that we found is now that we're at a certain point in the process, we're finding that either it's just that work's being done, so projects are being under construction, so the time is the construction side of things, and then the other thing is now that we're starting to see kind of more of the elevations come forward, and whether it's that they're doing things on their own or that they're just letting us know that they're still waiting on an answer from Elevate. I think that our goal is going to be to, once we have a better handle on how many of those we actually think, are going to be actual and factual, that then be able to really set some parameters and benchmarks of how many we, timeline and how quickly we can do that. Because, to date, like when it comes to an elevation, we haven't seen a project fully through, so.
Right. Perfect, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So moving on to training, the individual departments and staff continue to take the NIMS and ICS training on an individual basis. We also had training with Pinellas County to do damage assessment, and one exciting thing is that the county is now going to be using Forerunner as well. So the training didn't showcase Forerunner quite yet, but we're very excited because it's just the migration between now the data that the county already has and knowing that that's going to be transitioned over into Forerunner will just hopefully be that much easier for us to be able to get it over, and it'll be in a one-stop shop, and we'll have it aggregated in one place. The tabletop exercise that we conducted on the 16th of June was with department directors and other personnel that are assigned to the EOC, and that was a very helpful exercise for me in particular, not being here at the very beginning of everything, just to really talk through things and assignments, and then also be able to talk about the individual plans and then how that plays into the bigger plan and citywide initiatives. And then the Florida Floodplain Managers Conference, our building official attended that last week, and he had some really good insight that he brought back. Not only did we find out that, we're one of many communities that are finishing their SDAP for the first time, but we also learned that, there's a lot of other communities that when it comes to Forerunner, it really is, it's kind of it not only is an ideal software for what we're trying to do damage assessment wise, but I think it's going to be great as more communities and the county get on board with it in different jurisdictions. I think it's just going to hopefully be able to allow us to really make data-driven decisions moving forward, to be able to utilize that information. As I said, we have our first draft completed of the Substantial Damage Administrative Procedures Plan, and that's kind of housed in community development, but of course we also work with fire and other departments on the damage assessment. But the big thing about the SDAP is that it kind of assembles some SOPs for damage assessment. It also identifies roles and responsibilities. So we have what we refer to as our core damage assessment team, kind of that first team that will be deployed. And that consists of 5 teams of 2 individuals. And so, as I said, most of those individuals are within the community development department. And then it also it very importantly defines key terms that we found are very important to have, not only it clearly defined, but understand how things are going to be determined by the city, such as fair market costs, fair market value. So these are the types of things that kind of get woven into the SDAP. And then, of course, certainly certainly not least, the incorporates Forerunner. Again, this is going to just help us create significant efficiencies and be able to get all of the data into one place.
I have a couple questions on this. As far as defining the key terms, whose definition are you using for that? The FEMA's definition, the Pinellas County Property Appraiser's definition? Are you using the English dictionary? I mean, I just don't know, because it can be skewed either way.
So as of right now, and again, this is in draft form so that we can bring it back to you all and then receive your feedback, and if anything needs to be tweaked or changed, we have that ability. But as of right now, we're using the same formula that's used by Pinellas County, so using that 85% of the just value as captured for the structure only in the property appraiser. So that's the valuation that we're using right now. Again, because it's just pertaining to damage assessment for this piece, not, putting it in context for that purpose.
And for Forerunner, does it actually generate an ACV as the tidal basin did, or the SDE estimator did?
You mean based on the damages?
Correct.
Yes.
It does?
Yes.
Are we going to be able to use that as just one tool or metric?
Yes, yes. It very similar to kind of the platform that was used by Tidal Basin as far as the percentages. Very similar, but again, part of think a lot of the error going back had to do with how the information was how it was inputted. Yeah.
No, I just concerned because a lot of people went out and got ACVs and spent money to get an ACV, and to know that the SDE actually generates one and we didn't use it it is kind of disheartening. So I'm hoping that going forward, if Forerunner does have that, we can use that as just another metric to compare with what the county property, with the FEMA 50 letter says. And after that, if there's an issue, then somebody can go out and get an actual ACV. Thank you.
Question regarding the damage assessment teams. Have we considered maybe creating a volunteer cadre to assist with that, in the need that we get overwhelmed with the volume, similar to what we did with the permits?
So I have not discussed that with my team. I think that I'll defer to the city manager. I know that it would probably be, if there was a situation where we needed all hands on decks and we had volunteers that were readily available, and especially those that maybe knew a little bit more already about the process. The only thing that I would maybe think would maybe be a concern is just from a liability standpoint. That would be the only thing that I could think of having a volunteer go on someone's private property versus one of our employees or a contract employee.
Just food for thought. I mean, if we need to surge and try to get through these things, it might be something that we could consider, obviously with legal counsel, in terms of release of liability and things.
Yeah, there's certain things they might be able to do.
Thank you.
There's quite a lot of work, different subtasks.
All right, thank you. And now I'm going to hand it over to Camden to talk more about public services.
Good evening, Commissioners, Charter officials. As Laura mentioned, my name's Camden Mills, Public Services Director. So I'd just like to take some time this evening and go over some of the efforts our operations and maintenance team is underway with as we get into the storm season. First is maintaining our wastewater system. So this is repairing our lift stations, inspecting underground pipes and manholes, and cleaning our lift station pipes and manholes. To date, all of the pumps that were damaged from the storms, we've either replaced those or sent those off to repairs, and have received those back, and they are installed. So as of today, at all 21 of our wastewater lift stations, we do have 2 pumps in operation. We are continually to make improvements, long-term improvements to help this system be more reliable in the future. But we're working towards being back towards pre-storm conditions, while we also plan and engineer more mitigation for the future. Similar to our wastewater system, we're also cleaning and inspecting our underground stormwater system. So again, this involves underground pipes, manhole structures, outfalls, tidal check valves, and our baffle structures. Just to give a little bit of context on some of the work that we've recorded and logged into our asset management software to date, we've completed almost 200 reactive work orders. We've televised and cleaned just about 3,000 linear feet of pipe, and that's specific to our outfall pipes. Right now, we're focusing our efforts in that direction. We are still planning on doing a citywide televising and inspection. The request for bid package for that has been drafted and sent over to our procurement department, so we hope to get that on the street soon and then fund that in fiscal year 26. A lot of our tide check valves that are located at the outfalls, we've had 19 out of 35 of those inspected and cleaned. Out of those 19, we do have several that are identified for replacement. So we'll be prioritizing when those replacements need to happen. And then our baffle structures. Those are the structures that help collect debris before they exit our stormwater system and into the bay. We have maintained and cleaned all 30 of the baffle structures that we have throughout the city. So this isn't really a one-time effort. This is something that we need to continue to do throughout the year. Our plan is to develop a preventative maintenance action plans that we can execute through quarterly maintenance through a contract, and then also supplement in-house with our own resources and personnel. Also related to system stormwater is our pond maintenance. The city has 9 ponds that are dedicated for detention and retention and are permitted with our Southwest Florida Water Management District. So we inspect these 9 ponds on a monthly basis and then make any repairs as needed to make sure that they're operational and can accept flows and provide flood storage if needed. Tree trimming. This is something that our parks crew is underway with at our various city facilities and parks. We have about 69 open space, green spaces and parks throughout the city. So we're hitting all of those properties and just helping trim down any loose or dead vegetation where needed. One area that was identified recently that will get out to our contractors is along Paso Grill Way. A lot of the areas we do maintain in-house, but some of that we do contract out as well. So we'll contract with that vendor to make sure those are addressed during the storm season. Similar to trimming the landscaping in our right-of-way, we also do the same at our various public facilities and buildings. Again, this is something that we recommend to property owners to do as well. If you see, loose or dying vegetation in your yard, please clean that up so that way they don't turn into potential projectiles if we do have a heavy wind event. Street sweeping, this is something that we conduct on a monthly basis. So we maintain about 40 miles of roads throughout our city, and each of those roads is serviced at least once a month through our street sweeper. The idea here is to collect debris, sweep and vacuum it up before it enters our stormwater system. And then our debris management sites. So in the past, we have used Egan Park as our debris staging area before it's offloaded to a final dump disposal site. We have been coordinating with DEP to close out our permit from the prior year. We did some soil sampling out at Egan Park. We submitted that report to FDEP for their review. We just recently received feedback from DEP that they have read our results and are in concurrence with our remediation plan, which is to remove the top layer of soil off of that park and then resod with Bahia grass. So now that we've received that approval from the state, we plan to move forward with soliciting competitive bids for that work. So we'll be removing the top layer, removing any debris that's still currently on site, restoring the irrigation. There'll be significant repairs required to the irrigation there, and then we'll be replanting with Bahia sod grass. So that should be a package that we'll solicit down on the street shortly. In addition to Egan Park, we also submitted site approval for the Hurley Park area down in Paso Grill. One area that was identified for our debris management collector last season was just the opportunities for another location further south. They thought that would help improve their efficiencies. So we have requested the pre-approval for that site to deploy if needed, and the state has issued approval for that. Another location that we can potentially consider will be the county park. That lot is owned by the county, so the approval through DEP would be handled through them. But if that's another option we want to look at, we can start those conversations with the county. And then lastly, I'd like to remind our residents that we do have free sandbag disposal at Egan Park. Those are self-service, so there should be the sand and the shovel there for you to come and fill your bags. If any of those resources are not available there, please call our Public Services Department and we'll get those set up for you. And with that, I'll open up for any comments or questions.
I have a couple. First off, I want to comment, and I want to publicly thank you so much for 2 weekends ago taking that call on Sunday, because I was receiving the calls as well for a home being raised and them pumping water out. All the silt was going down the street, going into a stormwater drain that just recently got cleaned out. And I was very happy and very impressed that you personally called that resident back on a Sunday. So thank you very much. Took some heat off of me. No, just but I wanted to ask, from stormwater, how much total linear pipe do we have in this city?
We have a lot. So total-wise in the
miles?
city, we have about 18 miles worth of pipe. So what we've scratched at so far is really just the surface of that. That's why we're focusing our effort is more just that outfall into the pipes.
And understood. And so to date, we've maybe cleaned out a quarter?
I would say probably about 10 to 20%.
10 to 20%, okay. And that's why I brought the comment up earlier about the fact that, that is a big concern going into storm season, finding an Avon bag clogging a whole street and having that flood for weeks at a time because it was clogged. So I have big concerns on that and would like to be able to see, a maintenance plan as well as what we can do to go ahead and supplement, and how much that would cost to supplement, so that we can get ahead and not take over 2 years to actually get us where we've cleaned everything out and be 3 storms later, or 3 storm seasons later. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Camden.
Thank you.
All right, City Clerk, do we have any public comment?
Yes, Deb Scheckner.
Good evening, Deborah Scheckner, Bogusiega Isle Drive in St. Pete Beach, Florida. I'd like to talk about the certificate of concurrency. Now, this is a certificate. It's a document issued by the city manager certifying that concurrent availability of infrastructure, services, and other items for the city before they get a CUP, before they get a variance, before they get a permit to build. And for those who want to reference, I'm referencing Development Code 29.1B and 2104B and 29.3A. So just if you want to look at those later on. Intent is implemented by a concurrency management plan system, which shall be measured. Potential impact of a development permit application upon the adopted minimum acceptable level of service as provided in the capital improvements element of the comp plan. A certificate of concurrency must be issued before any tax-exempt development project, and all of the large projects we have are tax-exempt. 2104B, CUP's approval should not be approved without a concurrency plan, and that goes on for the others. I don't think this city has ever done that. It has been brought up before, with the prior commission, and it was just poo-pooed. Well, take a look at our comp plan. I gave you the numbers. It's telling us we need concurrency. And that only makes sense when you think about it. Why would you issue a permit if you don't know if the infrastructure, you don't know if the roads, the water, the sewage, all of these things are appropriate for the amount of building? And when we look around, you want to talk about the sewers? Well, there will be thousands of more toilets. Project over here, some of them will have at least 2 toilets in each unit. By the way, there will be no facilities for residents who want to visit the area, so pretty much we're not that welcome, I guess. And I just think it's important that we take a look at what we've done. I don't know if we can rescind some of that information because we didn't follow the development plan, or certainly going forward. This is a real issue. We need to follow the development plan. We need to follow the rules, the regulations, the resolutions, all the way down the line. And in the past, quite frankly, we have not. Thank you.
There are no further
No more?
comments.
All right, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I motion to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
You had A and B, and then you were going to discuss.
As amended, yeah.
As amended.
Do we have a roll call?
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
Commissioner Maldonado,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Marriott,
Yes.
and Mayor Petrilla.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, and so consent item C, the purchase order amendment with Joe Payne for building and permitting services.
I think,
You're gonna
did
make
you
that-
have questions? We had no
you're gonna- yeah. Are you-
presentation.
Do you have a presentation for
We
it?
do not have a
presentation.
presentation. We're happy to answer any
Um,
questions.
Yes. My questions are, it's a large amount of money, and I'm looking at that contract, and that's it's a piggyback contract for 5 years plus 2 extensions on that. How much are we paying per year? Is it $350, or is it $600, which I saw in the previous packet on that?
Yes, so the piggyback contract took effect August 3rd of 2022. So that was the beginning point. And it's not an annual fee, it's a per hour fee. So as they have different hourly rates for different types of support. So plans examiners are a certain hourly rate. We currently have a deputy building official on contract that is another hourly rate. And so we pay for the services they provide by hour of what that service is.
Do we have a list of those hourly rates? Because all I saw in our packet was from 2021, I believe. It was a 2021-22 for the hourly rates. So I don't know what they've gone up to. I just would be curious to see what the new, 5 years later, 4 years later, what the rates are.
Those are still the rates that are in effect.
They are still in effect.
And I just want to mention one more thing. So as part of this, because this contract, we piggybacked off of it well before the storms, and then of course we needed additional services, and hence that's when the $600,000 request back in December was made. One of the things worth noting is we have issued an RFP for personnel services for community development, both for Blue Skies and Gray Skies, which we're hopefully going to be making a selection in the next week or so. But that, in essence, is to replace this contract. And depending on the timing, we'll be making that transition. But that, I just wanted to note that because procurement, it's not their, recommended process to just continue piggybacking. It has worked out well, and especially given the circumstances. But our intent is to move forward with our own contract for those services to continue, for any additional personnel that we may need.
My understanding, we're paying roughly 3 times the amount out in the going market, or what we would hire somebody at on those rates per hourly?
Close to that,
Close
yes.
to that, 3 times.
Yes.
And we need 1 staff deputy position, is that correct?
Currently, it's the building official and the deputy building official, as well as plans examiners.
So we need two staff positions, and the other ones are just temporary positions? Or was one of those a staff position?
Our intent is to not depend on any full-time staff positions. Our goal is to proceed with recruitment for the deputy building official. We have a building official that will be starting, and then our intent is to then recruit for the deputy building official and to have our staff that'll be city employees, and then so we'll only hopefully be tapping into these services for those over and above needed services, such as right now during the recovery efforts.
Okay, so, and again, we're paying an hourly rate, not a contract rate of $350,000?
Right, correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make that clear, because I know that 3 times the amount of rate, and you know, if we needed to hire and we couldn't hire, I would be suggesting getting a headhunter out to get people if we needed to do that, if we can't recruit on our own, because it would pay for itself in the long run on securing people for the positions.
Absolutely.
All right.
That was my questions. Thank you.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Make the motion to approve?
I'll second.
Commissioner Maldonado,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Marriott,
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
and Mayor Petrilla.
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right. So we have our action items. We have Resolution 2025-18.
A resolution of the City of St. Pete Beach finding intent, providing for a pause in the enforcement of setback requirements for temporary modular public safety buildings in zoning districts that authorize public service uses, providing for severability, scrivener's errors, construction, and an effective date and expiration date.
Good evening, Brendan Berry, planner with the city. This is to address a modular building being installed in the Suntan Art Center property just south of the Don Cesar. There is an immediate need for it. It's a public safety need to get that temporary bed modular structure set up. Currently, it cannot meet the setback due to existing site conditions. We wanted to temporarily waive until Fire Station 22 is reconstructed, the setbacks where there's appropriate zoning for these uses in case this building needs to be swapped out in the future. Other structures need to be added to support it. We're just asking for the power for the city commission to be, or sorry, for the city manager to be able to provide those waivers when needed.
Thanks. Any questions for Brandon? Nope. Everybody's good? All right. Do we have a motion to adopt?
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 2025-18.
I'll second.
Vice Mayor Marriott,
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
Commissioner Maldonado,
Yes.
and Mayor Petrilla.
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right. And next we have the final reading of Ordinance 2025-10, the sign ordinance.
Ordinance 2025-10, an ordinance of the City of the St. Pete Beach, Florida, for the purpose of adopting amendments to the Land Development Code, Division 26, Sections 26.1 through 26.42, entitled Sign Ordinance, to ensure content-neutral sign definitions, standards, regulations, and requirements, and adopting amendments to the requirements for permitting, enforcement, and maintenance for new, existing, and non-conforming signs in all zoning districts, providing for codification, conflict severability, correction of scrivener's errors, construction, publication, and an effective date. This is second reading of the ordinance.
Good evening. This ordinance has been advertised in line with the city's requirements. We have not received any independent public comments since advertisement. So staff was directed to make a few changes from the first reading of this ordinance about a month ago. We've made the modifications as we understand them. We did lower the height and square footage of signage to match the highest existing within the new grouped categories. I mentioned before we had 4 grouped categories. We now have 5. We've spun off the Resort Facilities Medium District as the sign standards in that district were much higher than the grouping that they were a part of. So we did move that off to its own grouping. The other groupings have remained the same. In the commercial and Gulf Boulevard resort districts along Gulf Boulevard, signs are allowed to be 50 to 100 square feet, depending on the frontage of the business. They are allowed up to 12-foot tall monument signs. In the downtown and the lower intensity mixed-use districts, sign square footage has been reduced to 40 square feet and 8 feet tall. And again, that is the tallest of the existing groupings for any zoning district within the existing groupings that were proposed. Staff has removed pole signs as a permitted sign type. We did preserve the right for variance to be requested to install a pole sign where there is a genuine hardship. We've increased compliance time frame for sign maintenance in non-emergency situations from 2 days to 10. We have retained 2 days as the compliance time frame when there is an emergency situation. And we've reduced the number of election season temporary signs to the number of items on the election ballot. It was unlimited. This is keeping in line with our current code. It's based on the number of items on the election ballot, local election ballot. We've made a few supplemental modifications to address the changes that were directed by the commission. The first was to set a maximum sign structure area of 200 square feet or 200% of the freestanding sign area. These are for those architectural embellishments that we talked about in the first meeting. That is currently a sign limitation of 135 square feet. We've increased that to 200 square feet, but that is not for sign face, not for the communicative content of signs. That's for the architectural embellishments, the base, the other features of a freestanding monument sign. We've removed monument signs as permitted along Paso Girl Way between 7th and 9th Avenues. That is what is currently in the code. That was something that staff overlooked before first reading, so we just have modified that to be in line with the current code restriction. We've restored the depreciation compliance standard to 50%. That was the one real significant restriction staff was proposing at first reading. Senate Bill 180 has been signed. It is law. So we have restored that to 50% to keep it in line with the current code standard. We have also changed state of emergency banner provision and waiver of sign code compliance for well-maintained signs. Those are those local state of emergency bonus provisions for operational businesses. We had stated pre-storm. I changed that to pre-damage just to cover other potential state of emergencies that aren't related to a hurricane should they ever occur. So here are some examples just to talk about the distinction between sign area and sign structure area. You can see in red there on the Coral Reef Beach Resort sign. This is how the city currently calculates sign area. It would stay the same. We would draw a box around any signage, any communicative content on the sign, so that would capture both the painted part of the sign as well as the LED sign. It would capture all of that content as part of the sign area. The sign structure would be the backing. It would be the support. That would be included in that 200 square foot or 200% calculation. Looking at the Yacht and Tennis Club, you have the text, you have the communicative content, and you have the monument surrounding it. That is the sign structure area. Here are some recently approved examples. These, of course, were approved under the current code, but they would still be permitted based on the forthcoming ordinance. This is the Bellwether Beach Resort. It is in the large resort district. This is a sign that was compliant. It would remain compliant. It's 12 feet tall. That is the permitted height for a sign in this zoning district grouping. The sign face would be 43.75 square feet. That would be under the 50 square feet. That is permitted. They are allowed a double face sign. Those don't count against them if they are double face and 180 degrees to one another, so that would be permitted. And then the sign structure has 96 square feet in area. That is less than the 100 square feet that would be limited for a sign of 50 square feet in sign face. Another is the Remax. This is to replace a pole sign that was destroyed in the storms. The sign face is 50 square feet. That is permitted for the zoning. It's 8 feet in height. Again, that would be permitted for its area. And it's a 71 square foot sign structure. That's including that base as well as the sign face itself, 71 square feet, less than 100 square feet. We received a comment at the prior city commission meeting regarding any kind of disaster provisions. The current proposal is based on a citywide local state of emergency. It's not specific to any one property. If any property is eligible for it, all properties in the city are eligible. It's not based on any specific event that occurred at a specific property. So looking, for example, at the Dolphin Village fire, these state of emergency provisions would not apply to the Dolphin Village independent of a local state of emergency, which we are not currently in. If there is any intent to modify that to cover those more property level disasters or inability to use the property, we would need to modify the language to provide for that. So with that being said, we ask for either a motion to adopt this ordinance, or if you seek any kind of modifications or need to continue the ordinance to a specified date to receive more information from staff, we'd be happy to accommodate that. You have any questions for me?
I have a couple. Vehicle signs. I see that we have them, but then they're prohibited on cars.
Correct. We
So
define what they are, but then
We prohibited them. So like if you had a car with a sign on it, you couldn't have one, if I'm reading that correct. Or, lawn maintenance or anything like that.
Correct. So we prevent vehicle signs, and the reason we define and prohibit them based on the current code, and we effectively just carry that forward, is to ensure that we can define what a vehicle sign is. If we need to cite a sign that's on a inoperable vehicle or a vehicle that hasn't been moved or is parked in a way that it can't be relocated, that would.
I see that, but it also just says, it doesn't go into the prohibited side of it. I mean, it as I read it, when you read both of them, it doesn't specifically say that on the prohibited. Let me find it again. I had mine all marked up, and now I lost it, so. Let me get to definitions.
The definition is on page 8 of 42.
Thank you.
Right.
Oh, I'm on
Not
a
sure where
different,
the prohibited
I'm in the,
section that you're looking at.
yeah, I'm in the agenda, so it's not gonna, okay. Vehicle sign, vehicle sign, vehicle sign. It just says this includes. Vehicle sign means a sign attached to or placed on a vehicle, including but not limited to automobiles, trucks, boats, campers, and trailers, and that is located on public or private property, can be viewed from a right-of-way, period. This includes signs attached to the following vehicles: on or off-site inoperable vehicles, junk or abandoned as defined, vehicles that have not been driven in 72 hours, or vehicle with signage attached to it renders the vehicle not safe. So to me, if I read it that this includes these signs, it also includes all vehicles, all boats, all campers, all everything, and also includes signs attached to the following. Is my interpretation of that.
If you go to page 22 of 42, that's where the vehicle signs as defined in this division, and portable trailer signs are prohibited. Those are under the prohibited signs.
Right, you gotta get there,
So
hang on.
what's prohibited is those lists of the vehicles that are inoperable or staying in one place for 72 hours, or a sign that would make the vehicle unsafe to drive. It wouldn't be, say you had a wrap on your car for a real estate company, or what, you see a lot of these wraps now.
No.
As long as that car is operable, is driving around, is not just parked out by the street for over 72 hours, that would not be a prohibited sign.
So if somebody has their car wrapped, but they don't drive it for more than 72 hours, then it's prohibited?
That's where they would get in trouble, yes.
Okay,
Typically, you'll see them parked along commercial corridors.
but according to this, it would be,
Yeah.
it would be against the code if you had your car wrapped and it was parked in your driveway.
Or if you're a
and you
realtor, have a
didn't
sign.
drive it. If you just didn't go anywhere for 4 days, then you'd be in violation of the code?
I think so, right?
Pretty much.
That's our current restriction. And Commissioner Robinson, I think I understand the distinction here. So
Right.
because of the first sentence is broader,
Bingo.
the second sentence is more specific. So I
Bingo.
think we can modify that. That is.
Yeah, that needs to be like just
Okay, we
defined in there.
can fix that.
And I think the 72 is,
Yeah.
and you can't go on vacation. I
Yeah,
mean, if you
right.
work in the city and you have a car that, you can't go on vacation, you gotta move your car.
Got to hire someone
You
to
don't have a
drive your
garage.
car around
A lot
for
of
you?
us- A lot of us don't have garages. So we might,
Yeah, I
any
think-
thoughts on that
I
for
think we
extending
need to-
past 72 hours?
Yeah.
Do you want to extend that to the commercial properties? Where people put box trucks out that says,
I mean, I
son
don't
of big truck?
think we have much of that going on.
Sarasota, I'm not sure if they're here.
Yeah,
We could end up getting that.
I think we could fix that if we started to be a problem, but
Do you want to limit the 72 hours into non-residential districts?
Yeah, we could do that, do it as
Yeah.
a non-residential.
Yeah, that would,
So 72 hours would stand in non-residential?
I think that would
Residential would be exempt?
exempt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think that
Yeah.
would be. Oh, and then there was something else I saw, but now I can't find it, because again, like I said, I marked mine up and now it's not there. But I had a question, we got rid of free expression signs, and then I guess we turned them into sort of a temp sign,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
But then we talk about, so let's talk about, there's no time limit on them. Is that how I'm reading this correctly? There's only a time limit on election signs and event signs. Nothing else, free expression does not have a time limit.
Just one temporary sign, it could have any content on it that the owner desires, but yes, that is.
It doesn't have a time limit.
limited, correct.
I just wanted to make sure I was reading that correct in the interpretation of that as well. Those are probably my two questions.
I have two questions to see if anybody has any thoughts about them. One is, I think in the section on sandwich board signs being allowed, they're currently allowed immediately in front of the business, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
And I don't know that it would affect more than just a couple of locations, but for instance, in Dolphin Village, the businesses that are in Dolphin Village, for a lot of them that are kind of tucked away, a sandwich board immediately in front of their business is still really tucked away. Is there any reasonable way to make a provision where if a landlord allowed the sandwich board, like in a multi-unit area, a sandwich board would be allowed anywhere on the entire property, not just in front of the specific business?
My concern on that would just be the whole intent of the sign ordinance is not to litter Gulf Boulevard. I mean, if we had every one of those businesses put a sandwich sign out there along Gulf Boulevard, that's going to be crazy. Now, if we're talking just specifically because we're in this situation with Publix having burned in CVS, maybe that's something we could talk about as being, an exception in emergency situations or something to that effect. I would think we should be able to accommodate people, small businesses in that effect. But I think in general, having, 30 sandwich board signs lining Gulf Boulevard, it would be much, and I wouldn't be for that.
Okay. And that, in a case of emergencies, was going to be my next question. So currently in the sign code as it's written, it's like official disaster declarations, correct?
Correct.
Is there any kind of reasonable way to modify that so that, in the case of like what we had happen with the fire, where I don't know if it would be reasonable or if the city manager would feel comfortable with something like that being under city manager control to determine what's a local undeclared emergency that would give some relief or exceptions?
That would be inserted in page 30, and we could come up with some language and bring something back to you. The sandwich board signs are on page 29, and we could look at that probably works for most of the time. And then for these local property-specific fires and damage and emergencies, we can put some language into section 2619. I think we discussed today that they were looking at a one banner sign. Could you explain what they have now, Brandon, that they put up after the fire to try to alert people and customers that they're open for business, but not litter too much?
Right, it wasn't a full construction area wrap, it was really just the banner, but I have heard multiple requests to allow some additional signage. Now, would the commission like to extend the banner and the well-maintained signage to individual events? Would you like to also add a sandwich board maybe as an option during those events?
Yeah, I mean, because there's probably places where there's no good place to put a banner and a sandwich board makes more sense, so if that could be an option. And then I think all we would really need to do is extend the provisions that we have in case of a disaster. If we just extended those to be something that was also allowed in a local emergency basis as determined by the city manager, I think that would cover it.
We discussed something similar to language around maybe a variance request, so it's more informal administratively. It's similar to what we did for the Don Cesar when they wanted construction. I don't know if you recall that.
Right, construction on a Sunday or,
We
yeah.
gave some authority to me to
Yep.
do these variance approvals for certain
temporary waiver?
circumstances. Yeah,
Right.
that
Or there,
Temporary waivers
that were
and,
related
yeah.
to disaster.
there's no cost to that waiver, correct?
It was
Okay.
just a letter, so we had it documented.
Yeah.
And there was a public record that it had been, the request had been made, the stipulations of the request, and that the city manager had approved it in writing.
okay.
For the duration of the property damage emergency, we could make it.
Or-
It's
or
probably
at
best if we bring
discretion.
some language back to you
Mhm.
and continue this till the next meeting.
Okay.
I think we're almost there.
I know, I think we're really
I feel
close,
very
yeah.
close. I feel very close. But there was one other item, I'll come back later. It was, how I read it, I think it's a typo, but I'll find it again and send an email to the city manager to address it.
Okay, so do we have to make a motion to continue, or do we just?
Yes, please, if we could have
Okay.
a motion to a date and time certain, that way we won't have to re-advertise.
Okay.
Vice Mayor Marriott, you do have a public comment on.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Let's hear public comment.
Deb Scheckner?
Deborah Scheckner, Bogusiega Isle Drive in St. Pete Beach. Something bring a city good vibrations, good landscaping, murals. So my understanding is that if you put a mural on your building and it does not have content of what you sell, for instance, the debate shop shouldn't be putting fish and hooks on the side of the building. I don't see where murals were addressed here. And if we want to encourage the city to do some murals so we can be more in tune to what's going on in all the other cities, and murals bring a huge amount of tourism. And in fact, in St. Pete, they literally have a trolley with a guide to drive around and look at all the murals that we have in St. Pete. And I don't see this addressed, the murals, I could be wrong, in this particular signage. So I think that's something we may want to talk about, whether we can allow the bait shop to put some fish on a few hooks and make it really beautiful on the side. And this has to do with some beautification as well as vitality, I think, for a city. And what about the people who already have certain signs that may not comply? Will they be grandfathered in? That's my two comments. Thank you.
Just a comment, we do have artwork in here, but it's 2 or 3 dimensional. Page 2 of 24?
Yep.
Okay,
Or page 3 of 42 I have.
okay, I'm getting confused.
Artwork means a 2 or
it's all-
3-dimensional representation of a creative idea that is expressed in an artistic form, but does not in any way identify a business, product, business logo, or commercial message. It serves as a means of communication, expression, and a cultural understanding. That was something we discussed at the first reading.
And that's allowed, correct? Our
Correct.
sign code
Allowed,
allows
yeah.
that, yes. Okay.
Which I would take that as meaning a mural as well.
Yeah, it was
Um,
intended to cover.
Cover murals. And we do have a whole non-conforming section in here for being grandfathered in. Unless they get the 50%, just like everybody else, like the rest of us. They're subject to that.
Okay.
Okay.
So now I think we're ready for a motion to continue.
I'll make a motion to continue
July 22nd,
To Ju-
6 p.m.
till July 22nd at 6 PM for the resolution,
Ordinance.
or ordinance 2025-10 with its modifications at that time.
Yes.
I second.
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
Commissioner Maldonado,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Marriott,
Yes.
and Mayor Petrilla.
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right, so moving on to items for discussion, Commissioner Robinson.
It had just come to my attention, I was going through some of the items that we've been talking about at length on the permitting process and some of the items there. Ordinance that we signed in 2024-19 needs some clarification under, and that was the look back. And there's 3 categories under here, which is basically one is all the costs attributed to a project, and it outlines those of a contractor. It doesn't specifically say those of a homeowner, but then it throws some things into the homeowner, which you would imply was the homeowner category, such as insurance, overhead, profit, some of those things. So I think we need clarification on that, especially going forward into potentially another storm season, so that this is clear and concise, and we don't get into any issues on it. I've been working with the city attorney, and I've spoken with the city manager on this, so I just wanted to bring this to the rest of the commission's attention.
This fits in with the discussion earlier about the significant damage calculations.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So I just wanted to be transparent that that'll be coming up. Been working on that.
Perfect. All right. So, reports, City Clerk.
I just want to announce that we do have 2 candidates for the November 4th special election. John Maldonado and Mike Geiger both qualified for the election. It'll be held on November 4th at the Warren Webster Building,
So everyone will vote at the Warren Webster Building?
all of District 4.
Well, of course, yeah. Yeah, because it's just District 4. Yep, okay. City Manager.
Just a quick update and thank you to staff who managed through the storms on July 4th to get those fireworks up in the air. Special thanks to Mandy Edmonds, our Recreation Director, and Chief Kilpatrick, who got that tiny window, and I think the community really enjoyed the fireworks, so just wanted to say thank you.
All right, City Attorney.
Just wanted to let you know, as of July 1st, a number of new laws took effect in the state of Florida. We'll send you a memorandum that details and outlines all the laws that affect the city of St. Pete Beach.
Okay. All right, Commissioners.
Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing to report right now.
Nothing to report. I just wanted to echo the city manager's comments about the 4th of July. It was really fantastic, even with all the rain, to see so many people in the park and the fireworks, and it was that was really great. And also, the Beach Theater had their soft opening last week, and they sold out 2 nights, which is really fantastic. And I know everybody on Corey is super excited about that. So, congratulations to them. Mayor, do you have anything to report? Nothing. All right. Well, in record time, I think we're adjourned.